Hello, everyone, and welcome to the next installment of your favorite new podcast, the JoyPad podcast. We are... Actually, I think I even got that wrong. It's supposed to be like JoyPad. Oh my god, it is JoyPad podcast. What am I doing? Oh my god.
Were you trying to use the real name or the fake name?
JoyPod podcast. JoyPod just sounds right to me. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
I thought you were trying to make fun of me.
No, I'm not trying to make fun of you. I'm just trying to roll with our gag that we invented last time. So this is my enthusiastic introduction on minimum sleep and an energy drink and a half, 2 coffees, and a latte. Woo! Hello, world. All right. If you're feeling that buzz, it's probably the buzz that I have from playing my favorite new game over the weekend, which we'll get to. But my name is Tom, and I am introducing you to the JoyPad podcast. Oh my god! This week, and I'm just never going to remember the proper title of this show ever again. With me, as usual, are my 3 co-hosts: Mike Pinto, Mike Fleming, and Megan. And I'm going to pass it around in the reverse order of that. And I'm going to give it to Megan first to introduce herself.
Oh boy. Hey guys, I think I finally figured out my audio issues, so I should be here on a regular basis now. Sorry about that.
Yay!
Yeah! Are we going into what we're playing, or should we pass it to the next person and let them introduce themselves?
Oh, tell us what you're playing.
Ooh, what am I playing? I think I'm playing what Tom is playing, and I'm really into Final Fantasy VII, the remake.
Yeah.
And Animal Crossing, of course.
So, I'm sorry to delay the introductions for the other 2 for a minute. But I have to for a minute, because I don't think they've played the Final Fantasy VII remake. And I've expressed worry and concern over the Final Fantasy VII remake, but I've played, I don't know, somewhere between 10 and 12 hours of the Final Fantasy VII remake, and I'm so happy. I'm so happy.
Feeling pretty positive?
I'm so happy. It's good. It's not only good, it has kept all of the vivacious character that I wanted it to, and it's taken dialogue that's probably not aged well because it was from the late 90s, and it's completely replaced it, revamped it, and kept the same proper fun tone. It's appropriate, it's light, it's nowhere near the heavy, downtrodden, washed out thing that I was worried it was going to be. Wedge gets shot in the butt and it's funny as hell, and it's one of my favorite things. It's just marvelous, and I'm so happy that it is.
I'm glad you're enjoying it, especially because you've played the original. I never did. This is my first time playing through the game, and I think once I finish, I will go back to the original. But I'm excited to hear how you think it is, and even Pinto when he actually gets a chance to play it, just to see overall everyone's opinion. But I have so many questions and so many statements, and I've been messaging like Pinto as I play it, like, is this really happening? But yeah, I don't want to go too much into it because even though he's played it, I don't want to spoil, like, today's version of it.
No, and I don't either. The one thing I don't like is the spooky ghosts. I thought they're kind of weird. I don't think that's any spoiler. Because they show up in the demo version of the game too, just kind of out of nowhere. But maybe we'll get more on that as we play more. I've been so pleased with everything else that I've had so much of my worry assuaged, and I am just enjoying my experience. So I hope you're enjoying it too as your first shot through Final Fantasy VII. Mike Fleming, did you play? You played the original Final Fantasy VII, didn't you?
Of course I played the original Final Fantasy VII. I have not played the remake, though. That just came out. So I have no comments there, but I have played it, the original, and it's at least top 3 of my Final Fantasy games. At least top 3.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah.
6 and Tactics are the other 2 for me. So
yeah, and that's probably where I am too. 6 and Tactics, but yeah, those 3, and it's hard to say which one's the best, especially when you consider the Tactics was such a unique game, in its style and how you play through the game and everything.
Yeah.
Final Fantasy VIII is the worst. At least from the ones that I've played.
In terms of story, at the very least.
Yeah. So anyway, what I am actually playing right now is mostly what we were playing. I was playing in the past few weeks. However, I did play about half an hour of cat lateral damage that was mentioned at the
Oh,
end of last
oh boy.
week, and
Hell
I will
yeah.
say that game is actually quite enjoyable. It's not too in depth, and I don't think it's worth probably what the cost of Steam would be, which is like $10 or so. But if you need a game that like let's say you're playing another kind of game and you just get really like on tilt or pissed off or whatever you get when you play games that are either more competitive or more challenging, that kind of game, you just turn off whatever game you're playing, go to that game and just swipe everything down. You just enjoy yourself. So I like those kind of games. I haven't played a lot of those recently because I'm always like, oh, I gotta play a competitive game. Oh, I gotta play a game that is gonna give me challenges, and everything. Even when I play like an RPG or whatever, I'm gonna play at the hardest difficulty from day one. So like XCOM 2, for example, I mentioned that earlier episodes, and that game is getting very frustrating because it's very very hard. I even am not playing on the highest difficulty. I'm playing on the second highest, and it's still frustrating. So playing games like Cat Lateral Damage, I appreciate the recommendation because it's been, quite satisfying to get away from anything that, like, I guess matters or has any challenge. So I played plenty of other games. I only played that for about an hour or so, but it was a lot of fun. Mike Pinto, you've been quiet. What have you been playing?
So I recently just completed Final Fantasy X. And by completed, I mean I beat Nemesis, the secret big bad boss in the monster arena, and then I beat Penance, the big secret bad boss added to the international version. I'm done. I'm not going to beat the game. There's no point. I'll kill the final boss in one hit. So I've moved on from that. I have recently started playing Brave Fencer Musashi from
Oh shit.
1998, the PlayStation 1 game. God, I love that game. And
Wait,
then,
all right. Hold on. You can't just bury the lead like that because for years I've seen Brave Fencer Musashi just cover art and adorable cover art with like little chibi samurai man, and I've never been able to find a copy to play because this was in the era of Blockbuster games when I used to look for a physical copy to play. And I'm sure I could just find an emulator or something right now and play it, but I want you to tell me a little bit about it because I have this romanticized idea in my head of what this game is.
so, if you're interested, tomorrow the first episode of me playing Brave Fencer Musashi goes up on the JoyPad YouTube channel. And by tomorrow, it's going to be like 8 weeks in the future, but for you, Tom, it'll be tomorrow.
Hell yeah.
So, Brave Fencer Musashi is an action-adventure RPG by Squaresoft. Came out in 1998. You play as the aforementioned Brave Fencer Musashi, and you have to go through the game and collect the 5 scrolls to do a thing that I forget, and beat the game. And you run around and you slash enemies with your 2 swords, and everything in the game is a food pun, because that's what Japan does.
That's just fine.
The town that you're in is called Grillin Village, and it's in the all-you-can-eat kingdom.
Damn.
That sounds glorious.
There's
had no idea.
a Dumbledore lookalike whose name is Stuart Ribson, who just puts ETH at the end of every word and speaks in very badly translated Old English, which I love. He says things like, "He doth be gone. Pardoneth me, princess." And it's voice acted, which is amazing for 1998, and I love it.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, it's a very... You seem to think it's supposed to be a very charming game, and you're correct. It's a very silly game. The artwork's great, the gameplay still holds up really well, and the music's wonderful too.
Is it like a side scroller, like...
Nope. It's kind of top-down.
Okay.
It's like a 2.5D, not quite 3D. It's got like that isometric point of view.
2.5D is adorable, though. That's a style that's been lost to time, I think. And it was probably more a product of its time than anything else, but it's just one of, like, the most interesting... It was a constraint, right? Like, companies had to consider what they could do between 2D and 3D, and it emerged with this really charming kind of, like, half cartoony, half 3D kind of thing that really was like, hey, you're working with what you got, and you're coming up with something interesting and ingenuitive. So I don't know. I like that style. But I guess in my head I have like Tomba in mind, like games like Tomba.
It's similar to Tomba actually, and I was also thinking about replaying Tomba as well because that's
Tomba
a great
was
game.
a great game. Yeah. Little pink-haired barbarian thing.
And I'm also playing Resident Evil 4, but everyone's played that, so we don't need to talk about it.
Actually, funny that you mentioned that because did you get it because there was a sale right around now?
No, I'm playing it on my PlayStation 3.
Oh, okay.
And earlier today, I messaged Megan because I hooked up my PlayStation 3 for the first time in quite some time. Basically, my PlayStation 3 is my Rock Band machine, and I don't use it for anything else.
Yeah.
But I was like, you know what? RE4 is in HD on the PS3 as opposed to the GameCube. So I'll hook up my PS3 instead of my GameCube. The controller feels so tiny and flimsy compared to the PS4 controller.
It feels
Like, I'm
you
just
can
not used
snap
to it. Yeah.
Oh, and those back buttons, so smooth and
Yeah.
strange.
It's just funny you mentioned that because I actually I was able to get Resident Evil 4 for super, super cheap for PC. So
Oh, it's nice.
yeah, so I actually have not played it. So
Yeah, I'm planning on going through and playing 4, 5, and 6. If you get 5 and 6, tell me and we will multiplayer them on Steam.
Okay, good to know. But yeah, I did just get 4 CD key, so I was able to get it onto Steam.
It's a great game.
There's also
Yeah.
the rumor that they're remastering Resident Evil 4, which, like, I think we've talked about it, Pinto, that there's really no reason because it's not that old.
I'll still play the heck
definitely.
out of it.
Yeah, I'll definitely
They'll
buy it if
remaster
they do it.
anything.
Of course, because they'll sell it. They'll make money.
Yeah, I just want Resident Evil 8 to come out first. That's all.
Yes, yeah, I'm all for that.
Will it happen? That's the question.
Tom's just like, I care not for survival horror.
Mostly no. When we were talking about the cat swiping game earlier, the one thing I was thinking of was I need to get that so I can de-stress after playing Payday, because Payday's been giving me high blood pressure when we play.
Yeah, you get salty. It's great.
Oh, that could be thrown into like a blooper podcast episode. It's so funny. Oh man, that's good.
If we ever live stream Payday, we're gonna follow it up with me playing Catastrophe or whatever it's called.
Cat lateral damage, yeah.
Cat lateral damage, that's it.
So anyway, we had to cut Megan's topic short, I believe, last week. So
okay.
Megan is up
It's
first.
No,
I want-
she
It's all right.
talked about cat lateral damage.
That
she
was
did
my
talk
topic.
about cat lateral
That was
damage,
it.
but that was a micro topic. We want to hear the big topic that you had.
All right. So this week, I want a little bit of participation from you gentlemen as well. But I talked to Pinto a little bit about the topic and what I wanted to do, and kind of to go back to 1998. I want to talk about the first game that you ever played and like completed on your own without the help of like an adult or like an older sibling or someone to help you, or just a game that you really remember that stood out to you as a kid. So no pressure, we could just probably end up talking about my game, which for me, it was Ocarina of Time on the Nintendo 64.
One of the best
And-
games probably ever.
It's so good.
That's big energy there too, because that's a tough game.
That is a tough game.
Because we're going back like what, 22 years ago now?
Yeah,
That
that
sounds
was
right.
97, right?
Yeah.
97, 98, I think.
Yeah.
We're old, everyone.
Bite your tongue. No, but like that was the first big game that like I completed on my own and thoroughly enjoyed. Growing up, my parents got me into gaming. They were big into the Nintendo and Super Nintendo. My mom played Final Fantasy, Zelda, Secret of Mana, all of that. So it made sense to continue moving along with the next Nintendo generation, which was the N64. And both of my parents hated it. My mom loved the Zelda series, couldn't wait to play the new one, pre-ordered it. I have the gold cartridge of Ocarina of Time. I don't know if it came in anything other than that, but I have it. And she didn't play any of it because she didn't like the controller. She couldn't figure it out. It was just too much for her. She missed her, pixelated graphics. But I just fell in love with it. The story, the abilities, everything you could do. It was like, yeah, I played like A Link to the Past, but it wasn't the same.
If I may offer 1 point to your parents' favor, I remember being a kid and picking up an N64 controller for the first time and going, "What is this? And how do I hold
how
it
do?
and why?"
How do? Yeah, because you had the
one of-
three separate.
And oddly
Yeah.
enough, humans were only born with 2 hands. So
Yeah, the N64 controller was weird with the whole.
yeah.
Yeah.
But to the point of also as another kind of counter, Ocarina of Time was probably actually the first Zelda game I played and didn't really get all that into. So I also kind of understand your parents there. But I played and beat Link to the Past and loved Link to the Past for Super
Yes.
Nintendo.
Oh man.
And I also played and beat Link's Awakening on
Nice.
the Game Boy. So, and that actually was probably the first game that I played and beat as a kid. And man, did that take a lot of effort. Holy cow. You know, different experience from Ocarina. Ocarina probably took a lot more actual thinking and thought power and strategy and problem solving and or strategy guides. Mm-hmm. Not to say you're not capable of the strategy, Megan. I'm just saying
no.
water temples are hard.
Dude, can I tell you, it took me months to figure out how to get into, and I'm not allowed to curse, but how to get into the first water temple by giving the fish to, what's his face that's just sitting in the lake outside. I didn't know
Lord
that
Jabu Jabu.
all you had to do
Yeah.
was catch a fish and drop it in front of him, and he would open his giant mouth and you would walk inside.
But who would think that? That's the thing about some of those games is who would think that? And Ocarina was one of those few games right at that point in time, I think, where some of the more myopic games like King's Quest and stuff like that on PC that were really
Yep.
like the forebearers of RPGs that gave you 0 help and 0 hints and just
King's
you
Quest,
had to
the
hope.
original, was one of the hardest games I've ever played. And Myst is
my
another
God.
game where you're like, how do you play this
Yeah.
game?
What do I do?
I miss games coming with instruction manuals that had a notes section.
Oh, where you
Yes.
write in your own notes? Yeah.
Yeah. Like my mom was a big like proponent of that. Like she would sit there, she would have notebooks of like different things that villagers would say in towns, and she would like lay in bed at night and think about how to solve this next puzzle. And it would be 4 o'clock in the morning, and I would hear something on the TV downstairs, and it would be her because she figured out some puzzle.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I remember being a kid and keeping like a notebook myself or like a pad of paper and like a pen.
Yeah.
And I always like
Yep.
would write down like where secrets were. Like I specifically remember in Final Fantasy VI, there's a statue that like if you examined it, you got a sword that I think had like petrify on it or something. But it was just some random statue in a castle. So I like wrote down where it was. And just dumb little things like that. But I think Ocarina of Time was really kind of like at that juncture between when games were super not transparent with what you needed to do next. They didn't give you the little hint character that would follow you around and tell you what to do all the time.
Right.
But there was also a little bit of like, you know, you had a direction you had to take, and if you talked to someone, they would give you a little direction. And not that that's something that wasn't in Zelda games previously, but it
Right.
was still really hard with that one.
I mean, Ocarina of Time. You had, is it Navi, the fairy,
Yes.
the sprite that would follow you around? Listen, if you forgot what you were supposed to do,
But she wouldn't tell you to go give the guy a fish.
No, she didn't tell you that.
no.
She wasn't that helpful. So there's like 2 games that come to mind. Link's Awakening is probably actually the first one that I would say I felt a real sense of accomplishment beating. I can't remember if I needed a strategy guide or not. I have to assume that I did, because that was an even earlier Zelda game with
It was,
even
couple
less
years.
help. Yeah, I mean, it's black and white on the Game Boy.
Yep.
And I just remember the hardest part of that game is you have to somehow earn yourself like 300 rubies to get the bow from the shopkeeper. Or you can take the easy way out and you could sneak around real quick and grab it from behind the counter and then run out of the store. But if you do that, you are forever branded as Thief. It would change the name of your game to Thief instead of whatever you named Link. And if you tried to go back into the store, you would get like murdered. But that was like the toughest thing because there wasn't really any way to make those rupees except to return to like, the shrubs that keep respawning that you can cut down with your sword. Link mowing lawns for money.
A real go-getter.
And you get like 5 at a time. So like, yeah, sure, go do that 40 times. Or you can just go steal it. Stole it.
Yeah, that was my next question. What did you do?
Oh yeah. Oh, I stole every inch of that bow from that goofy looking fishman shopkeeper. But that was it was a really interesting Zelda game, and actually they just reimagined that for the Switch.
Yeah. I haven't played it yet.
I haven't played it yet. I would love to.
It looks cool.
Though. Did you play the original at all, Megan?
On the NES?
The Game Boy version?
No, I haven't played the Game Boy version. Mm-mm.
I would highly encourage you to play it then if you haven't played it at all yet. It's really interesting. I mean, basically all of it is the idea of Link getting washed up on an island while like trying to get back to Hyrule or something like that.
Okay.
And it's just very abstract and like scenes from a dream kind of thing. So it's cool. It's a different direction.
Yeah.
But again, really hard dungeons, same kind of Zelda content you would get from like A Link to the Past. And my like 9-year-old self was super accomplished feeling, even though I stole the bow when I beat that game.
Even though I'm a thief.
I am having the hardest time coming up with my game. I've been looking at my phone, looking up dates from when games came out because I'm fortunate. Tom, in your case, for example, you're the oldest child, so like you didn't have anyone till you got the games. Your parents got them for you.
I'm the only child.
I know, but you know what But I have a rather large family, so we had computers as far back as I can remember. Like the original Oregon Trail that came on like floppies, we had it. I know we did. So like my family had those kind of things. So I'm going to say a game which you guys might know now because I think there was a remake just based on my quick Google searching. But the earliest game that I can clearly remember playing was you had 4 floppy disks to install and to run the game. TIE Fighter, the original.
Oh, man.
Which is like, it was a long time ago, but essentially that game was probably that I can remember is the first game that I actually played through and essentially I think there was a general storyline to it.
That
I was actually, it is very hard, but I remember we had one of those old joysticks that you had to plug in, in replace of, I think it was with a PS2 plug or whatever. So it replaced like your mouse plug. You just had to switch them before you started playing. And, it was a very hard game as a little kid, but, those were the games that my older brother was getting. And he was the one that could have some degree of money to pay for games. So I think that's the first game I played, and I actually love flying games. So like Ace Combat, I loved the Ace Combat games that I've gotten. I've loved every one of them. So it's just like that probably set me into a path for those games as like kind of just like a nostalgic feeling whenever I play any kind of flying game. So I love like flight simulators. Not that I've played one recently, but I love flight simulators, any flying kind of game. Even just like the idea of getting up into the air in any game at all is incredible. So like we've played, for example, we mentioned DayZ. In DayZ mod, you can get a helicopter. It's like the end game to get a helicopter, especially in the vanilla DayZ mod. And I remember when you, Tom, and Pinto, you guys first went on for your first night, we got that and we were able to get up in the air with a helicopter. And like that was my first time, and I've been playing a long time, and it's just I love getting up into the air in any kind of game. So flying games have always been cool to me. But that's the first game I can remember that I clearly beat, and especially and specifically on the PC. But I also played other games like GoldenEye was another game, pretty early on.
Had a hard story mode.
It did have a hard story mode. But yeah, that game was also, I mean, the nice thing is I think I had either seen the movie or like pretty much knew the story of it. So like I kind of knew what was happening, and that game is very linear. linear. So like you start at one place and you get to the end place and then you're done. So
Yeah.
like there's that kind of kept for younger kids that were playing it, kept the kind of progression going. At least it's not like finding a fish and throwing it in front of a guy's mouth to make it open. That's the nice thing about those kind of games that I was playing. But yeah, TIE Fighter was probably the oldest game I can remember offhand, unless you count something like Oregon Trail. That may have been before that or around then, but.
But did you really enjoy getting dysentery?
I did enjoy that, I guess.
Okay.
You just had to leave people behind. You just have to leave them behind, man. You're not going to make it.
I have to ask because you brought up the older PC games. Did you ever play Wolfenstein 3D?
Oh, man.
No, I did not play that, but I think that came out pretty, like, doesn't it a late 90s game? Well, not late, but like
That was
97?
pretty early.
Was it early,
Pretty
93?
I think.
I thought it
Probably
was
mid.
later.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, it was on DOS, so...
Oh, well,
I mean-
I don't know. I just know that that's the kind of game that my parents never would have let me play because of like the Columbine shooting, for example, was, those two.
We were playing it well before the Columbine shooting.
Yeah, I know.
were,
I'm just
way
saying that
too
like
young
if
to
that's
play
not
it.
a game that
Yeah.
we were too young to play it, and I think that that's not a game that would quickly come out. Like my family always liked Star Wars. I think we had a copy of the VHS Star Wars things before I was born. So like, that kind of game or that TIE Fighter game that my brother's gonna have. Yeah, go ahead and play it. You've already seen all the movies anyway, multiple times. But something where Doom, Wolfenstein, those kind of games, that was much rarer for me to be able to play. I almost had to like sneak to playing those games. I would never get those games. I mean, when I got GTA 3, my parents were like, "Oh, I don't know if you should be getting this game," and the GameStop employees like, "Oh, you shouldn't be playing this at his age." So yeah, you just got to deal with some of that. I mean, but yeah, the earliest game I can remember is TIE Fighter.
Wolfenstein was 92.
Okay.
Yep, 92. That sounds right. So I mean, just to contradict myself from earlier, and to sound like my parents were horrible parents, which they weren't. I remember being relatively young and playing Wolfenstein with my cousin, who is a year older than me, and we're both sitting at the computer. There's pictures of this where we took down the robot Hitler at the end of Wolfenstein 3D, blasting him with a machine gun while I think my cousin was shooting him with the machine gun while I was hitting the cheat code, which I still remember as being LIM. So you would just hit it over and over and over again. It would give you maximum health, weapons, and ammo. So we just held down the blaster and took Robot Hitler down. And it was great. It was a defining moment in my childhood when I was probably only 5 years old. And we killed Robot Hitler. So take that, Robot Hitler.
What I find problematic is that I could play Wolfenstein 3D, but I couldn't play Mortal Kombat.
Yeah, I had the same thing. Well, I guess it's better.
Well, couldn't you kick people's heads off in Mortal Kombat?
Yeah, like I think you could like rip the head with the spine
Yeah.
you could remove
attached.
spines.
Yeah, but like I guess
Yeah.
Wolfenstein was a different grade of violence, but still.
Yeah, Mortal Kombat was more gory, I think.
Yeah.
And like it had the blood spatters and stuff like that, depending on what version. But Wolfenstein was more of like turn around some corners and shoot the crap out of Nazis. And
Yeah.
who doesn't want to shoot the crap out of Nazis? I mean, I'd let my kids shoot the crap out of Nazis.
So, Mike Pinto, what was your first game? You've been so quiet.
My first system was the Super Nintendo. So I played a lot of the Mario games that were... it's weird to think that Super Nintendo, or just Nintendo in general, was remastering games back in like 1995. But they did. They remastered the first three Mario Brothers games and updated their graphics. Now, I never beat any of those games as a child because I was terrible at them. And they were really, really hard.
I'm
But
bad at them today.
as
Yeah,
I spoke
same.
about Super Mario RPG in our very first episode, that's the game I remember beating without help from anyone or anything. I remember discussing it with a kid in second grade who was that my dad works at Nintendo kid, and he would tell me like all these false rumors about the game, like if you do this stupid, insane, ridiculous thing, you'll get this secret character that doesn't exist, but he was just
tried.
one of those. He was just one. Yeah, I tried. He was just one of those kids. But that is the game that I definitely remember playing so much, and Tom mentioned Blockbuster earlier.
Oh man.
I rented that game from Blockbuster so much that my parents just bought it for me instead. They're like, you keep renting the same game over and over again. We've spent so much money. We're just going to buy you this game so we can stop renting it from Blockbuster.
Yeah. It was expensive to rent from Blockbuster too.
It really
unless you went on what, like Wednesdays, wasn't it? That you got them for like $1. There was one
really
day where
don't
if you rented it
remember.
on that day, it was.
Oh, we never had that.
I think there was something like that.
I
like
would rent that
$5 for
game
5
so
days.
much. And yeah, eventually my parents were just like, we're buying it for you. This is stupid.
Yeah.
But that's the game that like instilled in me my love for RPGs that persist to this very day. I think I might have cried. No, I think I did cry at the ending. But the other thing is, I remember when I was a kid, the video game room was in the basement. And that scared me as a kid just because it was the basement for whatever reason. And the last fight in Super Mario RPG, like many RPGs, is a multi-stage boss. So you go through the first stage and you beat him, and then you fall down underneath the level into the next area, and it terrified me because the imagery was so unlike anything in the game. Like, he turns into this metal skull-looking thing, and I got scared, and I turned the game off. I was like, oh, this is spooky! And I turned it off. And, like, I went back the next day to beat it when it was light out, because I was too scared to play it at night by myself.
I remember getting stressed out, like watching my brother or like my mom or dad play a game, and it would get to a super intense part, and just running away and hiding because it was too much for me.
Yeah. Yep. I also remember my sister had the PlayStation growing up, so she bought Final Fantasy VII, and I really wanted to play Final Fantasy VII, but it was her PlayStation, so she got to play it first. That was the rules, which makes sense, but, you know, I was a little kid and I was impatient. So she'd be on the phone talking with someone about the game, like in the living room, and I'd sit at the top of the stairs and eavesdrop on her so I could hear what was happening in the game.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's dedication.
That's awesome.
And then you finally played it, and you're like, yes.
Yeah, eventually I was like, I need my own PlayStation because she doesn't let me play hers enough.
Fair.
Yeah, I do remember playing Final Fantasy VII a lot. But like I think I mentioned in the first episode, I was one of those guys that found the mini game almost as enjoyable as the RPG part. So I play all the mini games more so than
And they were.
they were very enjoyable at that game.
This is something that I find interesting now that I'm older, and I'm sure all of you can relate to this because a lot of games have an in-game timer or counter that shows you how many hours you played the game.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And it's insane to me to think back to my first Final Fantasy save, or Final Fantasy VII save, where I named all the characters really weird stuff because I was a little kid and thought the default names were stupid.
Yep.
But I also played for like 97 hours.
Yeah.
Yep.
And now I could beat that game in probably like 12 hours if I just speed run it. And it's crazy to think
How much
and
time
go back
you
and
spent.
and look at those, you know, as someone who's logged in like 400 plus hours in Stardew Valley, that's not much to say right now. But it's just to think how much time I put into that game as a child the first time I played it, and how utilitarian I can be if I go play it now and be like, yeah, I beat it in like 12 hours.
Yeah.
But you weren't trying to speedrun it as a kid. You were trying to like extract as much
Enjoy it.
enjoyment as you could out of it. Like I had a friend that competed with one of his other friends to see like how high a level they could get before they left Midgar, or like they had all of the characters' limit bursts maxed like before they got out of like the first area.
Yep.
You know, things like that. Like it was like creating your own challenge to get more fun out of the game.
Which you would hate to do now, Tom, because you hate challenges in any game.
That's a different sort of challenge, though. Like that's creating a doable objective and then accomplishing it. I'm not that interested in that now, just because I don't have enough time to do that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
but like when
that's
I
what I
was
was
a kid,
gonna
and you
say,
were
too.
like trying to kill time. That's a great thing to do. And you only had access to a limited number of games when you were a kid, right? Because you only have so much birthday money to go spend.
Yep.
So, I remember doing that kind of thing too. I mean, even with games like Wild Arms and stuff like that, or RPGs especially.
Yeah. I would spend, we brought this up last episode, Wave Race 64. Like, I would just sit and putz around on a jet ski for hours just because I thought it was super cool and fun.
Also, it had great music.
It did. It really did.
Oh,
and
yeah.
dolphins.
And dolphins, yeah. And I loved Wave Race 64 just because like there always seemed like there was a new trick combination that you were finding. Because they weren't very forthcoming with everything that you could do, and then once you started finding new things, you're like, oh my god.
And I remember being so impressed with the water, and I have no idea why.
I think I would still be impressed by the water. I would like to play Wave Race 64 tomorrow and just see what my reaction is to it.
I own it. I keep thinking about pulling it out.
I've gone back and played old games and like just how the sprites were built and everything. Like, wow. Like
Sprite art's beautiful, man.
Yeah.
It really is. I'm trying to remember. Oh yeah, I think I've mentioned this to Megan multiple times, but to me, a great indication of how good the graphics are in a game is how they animate water. A lot of times, if the water animation in a game is good, then the entire game looks good.
Yeah.
Because water, the hardest things to animate in a video game are water and hair.
Hair, yeah.
You're gonna love the way the drink looks in Cloud's hands in Final Fantasy VII Remake. Then they do an elaborate, extensive camera take on just like a drink that Tifa makes for Cloud, and it looks really good.
Yeah, it's probably seriously there just to show off, like, yo, look how great we made this game look.
110%. Well, I mean, Square is always known for their graphical like prowess and being on the front lines of the latest kind of graphical updates. So that's probably like the last frontier for them. Is like, look, drink make look good.
But are there any Coleman lanterns or cup noodles?
Oh man,
Not yet.
I
God.
hate product placement.
The Final Fantasy VII Remake only goes up to when you leave Midgar for the first time at this point.
That's my understanding. I'm not there yet.
As
but that's
far
my
as
understanding.
as far as we all who have not completed the game yet know, yes.
Oh, man.
Because I've been avoiding social media. Anytime I see anything on social media that's like FF7 Remake, I'm like, nope, and I scoot right past it.
Wow. I remember even when that game came out, the cutscenes of that game were incredible, epic, all the words you could come up with for it. Like, for example, my personal favorite cutscene from that, so if it ends up being in that, I need to like find it online, is the water I guess it was the water elemental attacking Junon, right? The place with
I know what you're talking about. That's not until the third disc in the
Yeah, I know it's not till pretty late in the game, but I remember my brother was obviously older and was able to get through.
That scene is insane.
That cutscene is probably the best. Like, as a little kid, was the best cutscene, for years for me. So if that's in the game, just let me know so I can find it online, because I want to watch that. It's gonna be so good.
I don't think that's out yet, but
probably not.
It's going to be crazy cool. But you're right, like especially for early PlayStation 1. Like,
oh yeah.
I mean, where we had Lego people. Like Final Fantasy VII was a Lego people game that
Oh my
had
God.
really like cutting edge 3D graphics for the time that really held up pretty well until the end of the system's life cycle.
I loved that cutscene and that the city as a whole so much that you mentioned Legos, I actually started building that city out of Legos because I was like, this is so unbelievably cool. Yeah, I know. I'm a little nerd.
That's awesome.
But
no,
yeah,
I'm into
no,
it.
I would get those ones, that had like those built-in slopes in the Legos, and I'd start like building them up as the wall. It was.
Man, it's just like anyone that rebuilds anything in Minecraft.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, I know.
I'm sure it'll be mentioned 8 million times, but Megan and I met each other at Lego Camp.
Yeah, we did.
So,
Yes.
Champions.
it's just
I wish I
such a
got to
good
go to Lego
origin
Camp.
story.
I feel like we're all going back to little kid age. Like I'm sitting here like I need to like have a notepad when we're talking about stuff, because like I'm sitting here going, find a new remake of TIE Fighter, find a new remake of, this game or that game that I played, find emulators of these other games. Oh, man.
Buy Legos.
And buy more Legos.
So expensive.
They are very expensive.
I kind of want to piggyback off Megan's topic just a tiny bit and branch out and be like, do you guys have a moment in a game that just, like, I guess blew your mind where it just completely changed your perception of the game? Because I can think of two for me. Number one is Final Fantasy VII. When you get out of Midgar, that was like, oh my god.
The world
There's
is huge.
an entire world to explore. Like, literally an entire sphere. Because that's the first game I played that had an actual world map.
Yep.
All the RPGs I played before that were far more linear. Because I didn't actually play Chrono Trigger before I played that.
Oh.
So, like, the world map on Mario RPG is kind of like bullet points.
Yeah.
You don't explore the world. You go from bullet point to bullet point. So, like, from this town to this dungeon to this town to this dungeon. There's no real world exploration. So once you got out into the world and you were just this tiny little cloud roaming around this gigantic world map, I was like, oh, there's so much more game.
So I feel like I want to jump in right here because I started saying these. I have two situations, and they actually both come from RPGs, which I would say RPGs out of any genre of game are the ones that tug at your heartstrings one way or another. So
Yeah.
My two are Chrono Trigger, when you are fighting Lavos for the final time, and you're ultimately going to get inside and fight, the actual core Lavos. I think it was like Lavos's core or whatever it was called.
It looked like Frieza.
Yeah, the music that plays then, even today, if I listen to that music, I feel like I have to save the world. That music is not even kidding. It's probably the best music. Like, we talk about like Final Fantasy VII, the One Winged Angel song. That was intense, but it's not the same as the Chrono Trigger one, where you truly feel like you have to save the world. Like, you are the last possibility for the world. So, like, that, every time I listen to it, I'm always like, oh my god, I gotta kick butt and take names. So that's the first one. The second one is on my mind. Oh, is Final Fantasy VI. When you are up on the floating island and you're going up to Kefka, and he ultimately ends the world. And when I watched that, like, the first time I played it, I thought that I lost. Like, I was going to have to resume the game and restart. Because I was like, this can't be, like, the game's over? What? Like,
what did I do wrong?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. What did I do wrong? And then to find out that the world did end and you do have to keep going, and you're back to just one character again. That blew my mind as a little kid. And I was like, I'm basically starting from scratch. I have no one. And I had to, like, go find the people again with all, the better levels that they had. And Locke was probably my favorite character from that game. And you can't get him for a little while, at least. So I'm like, I want Locke back because he's the only character I renamed to Mike. So I want him back.
Yep.
So,
which I fully copped to doing the same thing in Final Fantasy VI with just renaming
with Locke?
Everyone. I was Sion. Sion was.
Oh, okay. I was Locke.
Oh, I was Sabin.
That's so funny. We all chose three different people, but yeah, I was Locke, and just having to go through that as a young kid was also one of the best game experiences, and that tugged at my heartstrings in the opposite way, And I was like, I got to find everybody. I got to make sure they're all okay, So
I think if I could call out two moments, they're very mechanics-driven moments. So Final Fantasy Tactics, which is now one of my favorite games of all time. At one point in time, I had no idea how to really play the game. In the first mission, you kind of get Ramza and I think one other character.
Delita.
Mm-hmm.
Not even Delita in the first one, because if you remember, there's the mercenary.
Oh, the
Ramza
very,
mission.
very, very first one, you mean?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
And that one was fine. I was like, okay, this is great. We won. Everything's cool. And then the next one, it doesn't tell you how to place your party. It doesn't tell you that you have a party.
You gotta hit those shoulder buttons, brah.
Yeah, it was just Ramza and then his good old buddy Delita palling around as an AI. And boy, howdy, did I just get decimated over and over and over again on that map.
I'm so glad you had the same experience as me.
Yeah. I think I bumped a shoulder button by accident, and that was just like, oh my god. And just absolutely changed everything there. And as soon as I realized I could do that, it was a great game.
Before that, you're like, this game's impossible. What the heck?
Oh, like when you save before the first one-on-one battle? Oh, yeah.
Oh, God.
In the
Wheatgraff,
cathedral?
yeah.
The cathedral, yeah, with Wheatgraff. Yeah, that is the most
yeah.
frustrating part of that game. And the best part is, if you know how to play the game and you're doing fine, as long as you know that's coming up and you don't save, so you don't kind of place yourself in a stuck situation, you'll get through it, and then the game gets pretty easy again. So I actually beat that maybe a year ago now. But yeah, that's another wonderful game.
Is great. Game is great. I'm trying to recall what my other one was. I remember I had another one that was based on mechanics. I definitely had kind of a blow your mind experience when I was playing Front Mission 3, which is probably a game that no one else has played. But it's a Square Enix RPG about Gundams, basically, which is incredible. And it's really good, and it's built in a tactical style, kind of like Final Fantasy Tactics. But there's a point in the game at which there's a revelation that two characters you've been traveling with and basically working to save since the beginning, and that they are not who they say they are, and they're actually experimental children or people, and that's why like these government agencies have been hunting them down. They have like different names, which is funny because I remember one of them is named Emma, and her like real name is just Emir. So, like, it's not very different. The other one was, like, Alyssa, and her name was, like, Alyssiana or something like that. So, you know, they kept it so that you could keep track of them, and it wasn't a drastic change, but it was just kind of a shocking revelation that they were not who they said they were. So I thought that was kind of cool. And if I think of that other one, I'll bring it up.
Megan, what for you stands out?
I don't know. I'm trying to think what really impacted me. I think it was more with the evolution of graphics and also like getting deeper into storytelling because like yeah, you know, earlier console games there was a story, but it wasn't as deep and I don't know, impactful, at least for me. I remember specifically Final Fantasy X very early on in the beginning with Yuna doing the soul sending ceremony in the very beginning with that washed out destroyed village, and just how incredible and beautiful that scene was with the music, the graphics, the story, and just like how gaming had taken this leap, because I hadn't played a Final Fantasy game probably since the Super Nintendo at that point. I didn't play anything on the PlayStation 1. I didn't have one. So Final Fantasy X was like the first game I had played in a while, and just being awestruck.
Having just replayed Final Fantasy X over this past week, I definitely have to agree. But the only problem I had with what you're saying about that game graphically is the in-game character models look good, and obviously the cutscenes look amazing.
Right.
Even today, they still look so good. But the in-game models and the cutscene models look so different facially that I was like, that's not Titus. they because the characters in the cutscenes looked 50% more Asian than they did in the in-game engine, and it was just kind of weird because it's like, that's almost you, but it's not you.
It's a knockoff version of you.
Yeah.
Did they bring in the stunt double?
But yeah, the cutscenes are very, very good in that
Great.
game.
They are.
The soundtrack, everything.
Oh, there was totally a mind-blown moment in that game towards the very end when Titus and Orin were Bruce Willis in The Sixth Sense the whole time.
Yeah. The other thing that I wanted to mention for my second mind explosivo,
I remember my thing. Sorry.
We'll get to it then. Breath of Fire 3. Did any of you play any of the Breath of Fire games out of curiosity?
No.
What's the one where you begin in the house fire?
That's 3.
That's 3?
That was
I did play 3, but
Okay.
years ago.
Okay.
Which is the one where you're the blue-haired kid on PlayStation?
3 or 4. You're always a blue-haired kid named Ryu in Breath of Fire.
There was a gray-haired Sephiroth kind of guy too.
That's 4. You're thinking of 4.
I played 3, but I don't remember.
That was
very
Fulu
well.
in 4, which was much more Chinese in design than 3 was. But in Breath of Fire 3, that's the first RPG I got on the PlayStation. Because I remember when I got my PlayStation, mine, for Christmas, I got Tekken 3, Crash Bandicoot 2, Mega Man Legends, and the next game I bought after Mega Man Legends was Breath of Fire 3, because there was an ad in the little booklet for Mega Man Legends for Breath of Fire 3, and I was like, that looks amazing, I want it.
That's like a 4-pack of excellence right there.
I know. So I played Breath of Fire 3, and the Breath of Fire games, up until 3, are very vibrant, which, Tom, I know you like. 4 was kind of washed out, which was weird, but the colors are amazing, and there's this part in 3 where it's the first major boss, and you beat it, and the game was already colorful, but the area you're in is going through like a drought and a famine, so everything's kind of brown and washed out. And once you beat the first major boss, everything turns this bright, gorgeous, lush green. And as a kid, I played it for like 10 hours, and I beat the first major boss, and I was like, yay, I beat the game! And everything's nice and happy now, and it's beautiful, and then the game kept going, and I was like, there's more! And there was so much more. Like, it's crazy to me to think that when I was little, I thought that the first major boss was the last boss of the entire game. And, like, oh, God. And
games
there's another... Yeah, man. But games are shorter now than they were back then. But that game was just like, oh my God, there's so much more game, and the world's so beautiful and colorful, and I just want to spend forever in it. I just want to live in this world.
I almost don't want to bring it down from there, but my mind-blowing moment that I remembered was Final Fantasy VIII, where I played the entire way to the spaceship without realizing that you could only get new Guardian Forces by drawing them from enemies, because I thought the draw button was dumb. So I only had 3, and I had the lamp to get Diablos, but I hadn't used it because I was scared to go fight him. So I got Diablos on the ship. All of my GFs were like level 60, but they were the basic GFs.
They're the 3 that you're required to get.
Yep, and I didn't have good magic because I wasn't using the draw button. And then I read a strategy guide that said that you could draw GFs and you had to draw them from all the bosses up to that point. And suddenly it made sense why I was losing to this boss over and over and over again. And I basically found a way to lose an RPG.
That game was not very well designed. It was a complete change in, how all the other ones had been up to that point.
Did it suddenly make more sense why there were so many blank spots after those first 3 other GFs? Like, there's space for like 9 more GFs. What's going on here? Where are they?
Here was the thing. I was assuming it was like Final Fantasy VII where you had to like find them somewhere, and they had already given me a lamp that had Diablos in it, right? So yeah. I was expecting that they would all come in a similar form, like someone was going to give me a Pokeball that had a Guardian Force in it that wouldn't disrupt my time-space flow or whatever, and I had to figure out how to find those, and I just hadn't, I guess. But I was young. I wasn't really paying that much attention. I was just like, game fun, me go hit things with Gunblade. So...
See, yeah. And that game takes on a different tone now as a 30-year-old single male, because you two are married, and Megan, you're in a long-term relationship, and then you go into Final Fantasy VIII, and it's like, you don't have a GF yet? That's weird. You should go find a GF. And I'm like, thanks a lot, game. That feels great. Thanks for attacking me. That's why I pronounce it Jeef instead of GF, because it makes me feel better about my life situation. We're going to go get that new Jeef Ifrit.
That's good. Yeah, I think it's interesting that a lot of the conversation tonight was around RPG games.
Yeah.
And
And childhood.
well, because like I played plenty of RPGs, especially when I was younger, just because I had more hours. You could play the whole thing, and you could explore all the extra achievements and bonuses and stuff in games. In the past 10, maybe 15 years, most of my gaming has been competitive. And the thing about competitive games is that you can get yourself I'll describe it as an emotion more quickly than you can in an RPG, because an RPG builds up over time. So like, I didn't mention my competitive games, even though I clearly remember like the first Counter-Strike I ever match I ever won in an actual competitive league. That was a wonderful feeling. I remember the first time I dropped 50 kills in one match in that, which is basically unheard of. And StarCraft, when I first hit Masters in StarCraft 2, like, or I beat my first Grandmaster when I played against an actual professional player, like my first game that was commented. Those emotions are there, but they're still, I would say, not even as strong as RPGs. And I think it's because of the amount of time you have to put into an RPG to get that reward. So that, there's a very big, difference between those kind of games that are out there.
I think too there's an age thing to it, because I think a lot of the games that we remember as firsts, we remember stories from when we're little, and we also just remember those experiences. And I would hazard a guess that you probably weren't playing many competitive games when you were young, just because, well, the internet didn't really exist when we were young.
I would have you know, I was a very competitive GoldenEye player, and then when when Perfect Dark came out, if you guys played that, which was like the newer version of GoldenEye, if you will.
Oh yeah, Perfect Dark.
That actually tracked your stats. So I was like super pumped for that game, and I was also a very good Perfect Dark player. So I'll have you know, I was playing before the internet, but I will concede your point.
You weren't competing against the best people around the world. You were competing against your friends on the couch.
That is true.
You're competing against Timmy from down the street.
Yes.
I just want to say I would have been a very good GoldenEye player if the game didn't make me want to vomit. So, whatever.
Yeah, that is because you can't go into a lot of different, like, third person and stuff like that. Yep.
It's so barfy.
But yeah, I mean, one of my memories was playing Wolfenstein with my cousins. So I mean,
yeah.
I think age factors into it at that point.
Yeah.
I remember beating Tom in a StarCraft tournament in college and him being super salty about it.
I remember playing you in the finals of that same StarCraft tournament and beating you 3-0.
My butt kicked, which happens every time I play you in StarCraft, so it was a foregone conclusion.
Yes, I do love the StarCraft.
Listen, we used to be at similar levels of StarCraft ability, okay? And I used to take it very seriously, and I used to play a lot of StarCraft. And now I'm garbage at it.
We're gonna have a JoyPad podcast StarCraft match. Megan and I will commentate.
I concede.
What we should do is do a 3v1, us against Fleming.
Oh god!
And I bet he might still win.
That would be tough. That would be very tough.
Megan, you played StarCraft like once, 8 years ago.
Yeah, like once or twice.
He'd win while declaring micro every 2 seconds.
Micro.
Yeah, it would depend on if it's StarCraft 1 or 2, I think would also matter. But anyway, I mean, so for me, a lot of my later years in life, from like 13 on or so, I would even argue 10 because of like, Perfect Dark and GoldenEye and those kind of competitive things. Most of my emotions that I get from games are because of a situation in a competitive aspect. So it's different though. You get those highs much quicker, but they're not as long lasting. And maybe that's because also you're younger, but I don't think if I played, unless it was one of those that we've mentioned, I don't think an RPG would do the same for me, even if it was the best RPG that came out, in the past few years.
I don't know, Megan. I text messaged you at like 3 a.m. when I beat Final Fantasy 15, and I was like, I am crying like a child right now.
That game, yeah, and it took forever to get there. Like I started it and stopped and went back to it, and
I restarted it 3 times.
It was great.
When I got to that ending, and Florence and the Machine started singing "Stand By Me," I was like, my eyes are faucets.
Yep.
And guys, I was 29. This was last year. So
I should probably play that game and just try to rush it instead of trying to do side missions that
I
did
should
find
too.
fun.
Yeah, I should play a newer RPG. I really haven't played too many new RPGs recently. See if it actually gets me that invested in it.
or I would even recommend going and playing an old RPG that you've never played before.
Or at least one like Breath of Fire 3 you mentioned.
Yeah.
I don't remember anything but the beginning of that game.
You should. That game, and again, it might just be nostalgia talking, so it'd be fun for me if you went and played it and tell me what you thought playing it now, whereas I played it back in 1998, and I'm still just like, oh, that game.
Yeah.
Like, I get feelings in my stomach just thinking about it, you know?
Yeah. Well, it's like me and Chrono Trigger, definitely, or Final Fantasy
Yeah.
7. Those are my two all-time favorite RPGs.
How could you not feel that way around Chrono Trigger, though? Chrono Trigger is just such a good game.
Yeah. To that point,
Such a good game.
I plan to listen to the soundtrack again for Chrono Trigger after this podcast. And I just noticed we are actually just about at time. We've had a very lively discussion about emotions and RPGs
Nostalgia.
and
And
nostalgia.
and so little of it was negative. We're living up to our name.
Yeah.
Woo!
Finally.
If anyone is listening to this podcast and heard any of those games and haven't played any of them, they should play like
it.
everyone that we mentioned is a top,
Or
10 game.
share with us your memories of playing those games.
Oh, yeah.
Seriously, we would love to hear that stuff. Because guess what? Our social media channels are up.
We're on the internet.
It's JoyPad Pod everywhere. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter even. JoyPad Pod. Find us. Let us know what you think. Tell us things. Tell us anything. Not anything.
Don't tell us.
Well, I mean, you
anything.
can tell us anything. We might not respond. I mean,
Yeah.
We might be a
depends
little
on
a little
what it
creeped
is.
out.
I don't want to
know.
hear things about your feet.
Oh man, I just had
God.
if this was like Joypad After Dark, I had the best thing to say right then about
Oh, you know what?
about a
That's a
Rumble
good
strip,
idea, though.
but I'm not gonna say it.
Oh.
Oh.
JoyPad After Dark is an interesting thought, though. We should give some, and we've also given thought
This'll
to
happen.
like the Nega Universe version of JoyPad Pod, which I think we will do occasionally, where we come in and just rant about stuff we hate.
Oh yeah, we have to.
Do we just start every episode by going, whoa?
I thought you were gonna say, do we start every episode by talking about Daisy Standalone? But don't.
Yeah.
Ooh, with the harsh vibes.
Bringing
But
it
yeah.
down.
Come check us out on JoyPad Pod and follow us and do all that stuff.
And while you're spending those 125 plus hours playing through all of these games that we've just detailed, share those lovely memories with us on the socials.
We want full reports.
Give us
Yep.
those joy cells. We need to tap into your pleasure brains.
Planet, give us your energy. I am forming the spirit bomb.
Oh God.
Everyone put your hands up.
5 episodes later.
And then the world
Thanks
is
for
destroyed,
listening,
but
everyone.
not by COVID-19, by Michael Pinto charging up a spirit bomb.
Hey, my hands are still up. I'm going to have to bring them down to stop the recording. But thank you for listening, everyone. And we'll be back next week with... Is it my turn?
Next week would be my turn and your turn, I guess.
It's a Mike turn.
It's Mike's turn.
I don't remember. We'll figure it out. I'll let you know. It's Mike or Mike next week. Or perhaps both of us, depending how long our topics
Yep.
go. My
Sounds
arms
good.
are getting tired. Thanks for listening, everyone. This was a great episode.
Woo! Stay joyful,
And we'll see
everybody.
you next week. Hey, there's our sign-off.
Oh.
I like it.
I like
there
it.
we go. Alrighty. Sounds good. Stay
Guys,
joyful.
my arms are
I
cramping.
made a soundbite.
Until next time,
Until next time.
stay joyful.
Bye.
Bye.
See ya.